For those of you who are just joining on the recording side, welcome to the IDS information session. We've just gone around the room and introduced ourselves, gotten to know each other a little bit. And I'm just about to launch into the sort of main content. After the content, we'll be talking about questions and answers, which will keep the recording going so that if you're watching this after the fact, you'll have the benefit of people's questions. So I will now share my screen. You'd think after 3 years of doing this that I would be graceful in terms of figuring out how to do this, but it always takes me an awkwardly long amount of time. Where do I share my screen? Reaction, live transcript. Come on now. Oh, it's the one that's green. Okay, I'm going to share this. Can you all see the slides? Yeah, all right. So I'm going to go into, here we go. So this is the info session. Oops. So what we're going to do today is talk about the difference between a general Bachelor's of Arts degree and then the BA honors as we interpret it here in development studies. And every department has their own kind of take on this. So it's important to kind of, if you're thinking about different departments, to reach out to people like me, the honors coordinators in each department, and kind of get the lowdown. Unless you're sure that IDS is degree number one, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about what a BA level thesis is, because this is a kind of relatively new change for this year, is that we've now phased out the other options for the BA honors. So we used to have a coursework stream. Now we just have the thesis stream. So if you're going to do a BA thesis in IDS, whether it's a combined or a concentrated degree, it will involve the thesis workshop, and we can talk about that in turn. I'm then going to take you through the specific requirements, what's needed for admission to get into the program, and then we'll talk about what a combined honors degree looks like. And I'll spend just the last slide there talking a little bit about minors. Some of you are thinking about minors and certificates, so I just want to explain a little bit about how minors and certificates work within the honors program as well, and then open to your questions for the remainder of our time. So, choosing the right BA. So if we were to compare the two together, both the general BA and the honors BA are really excellent backgrounds in general for all kinds of work, graduate work, law school, working in the field, et cetera, et cetera. People go on to do very fulfilling things, regardless of if they do an honors degree or a general BA. The general BA allows for a lot more freedom of choice, right? So you can have greater flexibility in the kinds of classes and electives that you take. Oftentimes students can finish a general BA a little bit quicker if they need to than the honors thesis, than the honors degree, which tends to be a little bit more demanding in terms of specific classes that you need to take and overall credit hours that you would require. And I'll get to those details in turn. The honors BA, by contrast, it asks and in fact demands of people who are in the honors degree to develop a specialized set of skills that's intended for advanced research. And that advanced research can be applied ultimately in lots of different ways in the work field, in the research field, in the professional schools and graduate schools as well. It also then requires, as a way of demonstrating preparation to be able to do that kind of work, a higher level of academic excellence in your past coursework, the details of which we will get to eventually. And the benefit to the honors degree over the general BA, and over is the wrong word, I would say adjacent to, one of the things that you will be walking out of with an honors degree that offers you an advantage is that you will be able to show to whether it's an employer or the next level of schooling that you have worked with a supervisor to research write, edit, and ultimately produce a 40-page piece of research, which is no small feat. You know, like everybody will graduate from a general social science degree with the ability to research and write a paper, but it's just like a next level project to think about writing a paper that's twice as big as what a regular paper might be, and involving oftentimes original research or a higher level of intensity of research. And I'm going to give you some examples about what students have worked on in the past as well. Any questions about this so far? If at any time you do have a question, feel free to just interrupt me and we'll go ahead. So then, what does the thesis itself look like? Surely you must be thinking about, well, what is this beast of a thesis? Well, our honors program is dedicated to two main tasks. So those of you who apply and are admitted into the honors program, you can expect a full year-long course that will be built essentially around two main objectives. The first that we will work on in the first semester is rigorously developing the skill to research, develop, and edit award-winning grant applications for academic scholarship. So this is going to sound a little bit weird, but the entire output of the first semester, in the fall semester, is a one-page piece of writing. One page, that's all we're after. Anything that you write beyond that one page is gravy, and it's just going to set you up for an easier second semester. But what we want is award-winning level grant applications. And in the field, the broad fields of social science, and that includes, you know, sociology, political science, geography, all these other fields, the sort of big prize granting place for scholars at all levels is called the Social Science and Humanities Research Council of Canada. They expect that students who are entering into a master's degree, they need to, if they want to win money, and it's $17,500. So it's not, we're not talking about small amounts of money. They expect a one-page research proposal about what you would want to do at the master's level. So we model, it's not exactly the same, but we model our whole first semester towards preparing you to write one of these and submit it. And in the past, many of our students have actually written this proposal, sent it off, and gotten $17,500 of funding to go on to graduate study elsewhere in the country. And I do believe that it's only for elsewhere in the country, that particular scholarship, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So that's the purpose of the first semester. So, you know, it sounds like a huge project. It is a huge project, but what we're asking for semester one is a super polished one pager. And we workshop methods to produce that one pager, and also methods that will help you to produce the ultimate thesis, details of which are forthcoming. So yeah, and then the next piece that we have here is learning how to design research, you know, revise a substantial piece of academic scholarship. These are the kind of learning outcomes ultimately that you're going to have, because it's not just writing a big paper, right? Probably any of you right now, if push came to shove, you could write 40 pages of something. But what you're going to be working on and developing here is the skills, the communication skills, the critical feedback skills, the revision skills to ultimately produce an excellent piece of writing, because there is a huge gap between a piece of writing and an excellent piece of writing. And we want you to produce excellent pieces of writing. So this involves skills like cultivating professional relationships and accountability with a thesis supervisor. Everybody would work one-on-one with a thesis supervisor, as well as then coming to class regularly with the honors coordinator and everybody else who's going through the cohort with you. You'll be cultivating collegial and collaborative research and writing community with your peers while learning to practice constructive criticism. Now, learning to practice constructive criticism, that sounds like maybe not a big deal, but it's actually a real solid practice. And it's not something that we tend to do very well in academia, but because everything is so individualistic. But the approach that we take is very much about learning to engage one another's work and ideas in a constructive way, so that there's a real collaborative feel to moving through this program. And then finally, yeah, some of the research skills that you can plan on developing in the program, it targets interdisciplinary projects because IDS is an inherently interdisciplinary field. So we'll talk about strategies, including using the Freedom of Information Act to get access to private government documents or university documents that people don't want you to have. We will talk about archival research. We'll talk about, constructing literature reviews, which will be the bulk of most of the work. We'll be talking about comparative case study methodology. So how to pick and justify case selections, how to set up and ultimately deliver really great theoretical research that's motivated by, bigger conceptual themes. How to move through a research ethics board application to make sure that you have permission to do ethical research, which is no small feat in and of itself. And that will allow you to do things like semi-structured interviews for those of you who really kind of want to go that way. And most people don't go all that way for the research ethics boards, but some do, and it's oftentimes been wonderful. So I wanted to give you just an idea of some of the work that your predecessors have been doing. So I have a couple of slides here that I just grabbed randomly at different topics. So this was one from last year. It's in red because Beata Elliott won the Best Thesis Prize. Each year there's a Best Thesis Prize. So her thesis was called Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity in Canada's Refugee Determination Process. It was a really great piece of writing. Meredith Nelson from 2018 worked on power and participation in urban planning, representations and realities of the Regent Park revitalization. So a real kind of like urban geography kind of focus there. Rebecca Kingdon, the year before, worked on the benefits of urban green spaces and promoting mental health in Winnipeg. Peter Steele, who then went on to be a master's student in our program, effective strategies for treating PTSD within disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration among former child soldiers in North and South Kivu in the Congo, Democratic Republic of the Congo. Salam Abdallah, examining the accessibility of Ethiopia's agricultural extension system for women farmers. It was a really great piece of writing from a student who was really passionate about Ethiopia, a place where she's from. And this student has since graduating gone on to set up an organization that she's running in Ethiopia, which is really cool, influenced in part by the work that she was doing there. Claudia Castillo-Prent, reclaiming our stories, analyzing the uses of Afro-Colombian music as a means of social change and radical self-actualization among Black communities in Colombia. Really cool project that took a kind of ethnographic approach, looked at her own family of Black Colombian musicians, and ended up writing a really cool thesis that then got mapped onto a graduate project, and she's now doing her master's on a similar theme. I think she went to York in the end in communications and cultural studies. So, you can really go off in different directions. Kat Turner did an amazing amount of original research. You'll find I'm talking a little bit more about some of the students. I'm only talking a little bit more about some because they're students that have been in classes that I've taught, so I'm familiar with their projects, but every one of these projects is super interesting. So Kat wrote No Such Thing as Sovereignty on Stolen Land, a discursive analysis of food sovereignty in federal, provincial, territorial government publications in Canada. And what was really fantastic about what Kat did was it was original research based on looking at publicly available sites, but she was able to bring together and actually do a content analysis to look at like how the word sovereignty isn't used by governments, even if it's supposed to be central to this idea of food sovereignty. So it was like, Kat was really thinking a lot about how can I write a project that will also be able to be used by activists who are trying to make cases about food sovereignty. So Tanha Tanjila wrote a piece called The Roots of the Uyghur Genocide, How China's Denial of Its Colonial Legacy of Uyghur Indigenous Identity Led to Genocide, which was a super cool piece because theoretically she was applying the principles of settler colonialism and looking at China, which is like I'd never even heard of anybody doing that before. So that was really neat. Claire Chadwick, who recently wrapped up her master's at Harvard after leaving Dal with this thesis topic, looked at the mental health needs and resilience of child refugees in Halifax elementary schools. Sabrina Guzman-Skocnitsky is now about to start a master's program in sociology at the University of British Columbia, working on similar themes after she was working as a youth climate activist with NGOs out in the West Coast. I supervised her project, and it was really neat. Peace Within the Movement: How Halifax-based climate justice activists create sustainable and supportive relationships. So she was one of the few that actually went through and did the research ethics board, and then did original research and recordings and that sort of thing. Alex Hughes, who won in red because she won the prize, the Best Thesis Prize in her year. White Lines: Media Representation and the Protection of White Perpetrators of Violence Against Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit People in Canada. It was a fantastic piece. Alex is now starting law school at the University of Victoria's Indigenous Law program, which is a relatively new legal program. Maddie Tang also worked on communications with John Cameron. Climate communications in film form, comparing the effectiveness of communication devices in film and non-film applications. Maddie's works at Ecology Action Center now, which is super cool and relevant. Margaret Ross wrote a great piece on criminalization of poverty, working with social workers. So looking at how Black and Indigenous women who are incarcerated face like a number of unfair challenges. And then Angela Chingan Hu wrote Where the Girls Are: Military Prostitution and Sex Tourism, a Sexual Consumption of the Other in the Philippines, which was a little bit more theoretical, using the ideas of bell hooks. And then finally, a political economy one in here too. Don't want to leave the political economists out. Murray Hancock wrote about the economic reforms and the decline of the Franc-Afrique, using a case study of Côte d'Ivoire from 1980 to 1994. And I just wanted to give you, obviously this year, students are just writing now, so their final outcome might not be exactly like this, but in general, this year's cohort, this is what they're working on, which is a quite interesting array of topics. Policy effectiveness of COVID in Costa Rica, overseas development assistance, incels, the incel community as transnational public safety threat, sexual misconduct in the Canadian Armed Forces, that's using access to information requests as well, queer liberation based on the archives of the Ottawa Dyke March, global citizenship and education platforms, as well as menstruation and colonialism. So there's a really, what I wanted to spend time, serious time, kind of showing you what other people have worked on, so that you can see that we are flexible and excited enough to work with a wide range of topics. We really want you to be able to have a platform to do a deep dive into the things that you find interesting. So does anybody have any questions right now, or shall I proceed? We're good. Okay. So, this is the general BA. I'm just going to put it up against the honors BA requirements so you can see the difference. So this is the same 120 credit hours, all the regular first year requirements, all the same core classes. You still have to do the development theory requirement, which is any third year or fourth year class that has a INTD course code that's not dedicated to practice. And when I say dedicated to practice, I mean 3003 or 3002, and experiential learning. Instead of 12 credit hours at the second year and above, you do 18 credit hours. So that's an extra 2 classes. And then the same at the third year level, an extra 2 classes again. And then the minimum, you also have to take the honors thesis workshop, but that actually counts as your fourth year seminar requirement. So you don't have to take any other classes after that. The minimum maximum is a bit different when you're doing your honors in IDS. You have to take 54 at least IDS or IDS approved classes versus 36 to a maximum of 66. So there are differences, but the differences are really just about intensity of concentration. Any questions about that before I move on? Okay. Oh, yes. And you need to have a minimum GPA of 3.7 for admission with a B+, A- average in IDS approved classes. So, you know, if you're really, really, really close to that 3.7, still put in the application. It's literally in red, but you know, there's always a little bit of wiggle room depending on the full, we look at the whole application, not just the GPA. So for anybody who's doing combined honors, and many people do, it really depends on if IDS is your first field or if IDS is your second. So if IDS is your first field, then your honors application and your honors training will happen here in IDS. If IDS is the second field for you, then you'll do all of this stuff, but in whatever your first field is. And your honors application, that form that you've probably seen with the spaces, not our application form, but the registrar's application form, that will get processed in your other department first, and then it'll come to us in IDS. And the basic requirements, whether it's a combined honors or just a regular degree, are the same if IDS is the secondary field. So you got to have 2001, 2002, either 3002 or 3003. A theory class, which is anything at the 3rd and 4th year level that's not a practice class in IDS. And then you need 12 credit hours at or above the 2nd year level, and at least 6 credit hours at or above the 3rd year level. So that's your requirements if you're doing combined honors. So now the requirements for admission. You got to have filled out honors application, which you all probably already have, but if you don't, you can find it here to that hyperlink. We ask for a writing sample of your very best work. Ideally, this will be a term paper from 3rd or 4th year, but you know, you decide what your best written work is. We need your unofficial academic record, which you can just download on DAL online for free. A brief description of what you might be interested in researching for your thesis, as well as the name of somebody you might want to work with. It doesn't mean that you don't even have to necessarily reach out to this person ahead of time. It's just like to know that you've done a little bit of digging to see like where people's expertise is. And the answer to the following question: why do you want to pursue an honors degree in IDS? And then all of this should come to me via email, parasram@dal.ca, by next Friday, and put it all in a single PDF file if you can. So that's the requirements. I did have just a quick note on minors and certificates, and then I think that's about it. So the link on the bottom there is where you can see the list of all the various minors. The big difference between a minor and a certificate is that the minor, you can't double up on credits. And what I mean by that is, say you take, I don't know, Poly 2510, and that counts for your minor in, I don't know, municipal politics or something like that. That then can't also be counted as an IDS or IDS approved class. It can only be one or the other with the minor. The certificates are a whole other ballgame. The certificate, you can double up on your credits. So, you know, if you're doing the Indigenous Studies certificate, many of the Indigenous Studies classes also count as IDS approved classes. So you would be simultaneously satisfying the requirements of the certificate and the requirements of the main degree, which is a pretty cool way to add extra things to your transcript and get certified in a particular field. But yeah, if it's a minor, the minor goes through all the same vetting processes. And that's all I've got. So now it's time for just question and answers. I'm going to stop the screen share so we can kind of see each other again. And yeah, we've got up to 20 minutes, as long as you like. So how can I help you make your decisions?
Could I ask a quick question?
Please do.
For the no doubling up with a minor, is that only for honors, or does that apply for just the general BA as well?
The general BA as well. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Good question. Yeah. Yeah, we don't go out of our way to make it like extra logistically complicated for the honors student. It's just everybody who has to face those same dilemmas. It's the certificate that is a kind of, I'm not even sure why, but the certificate is a different process. And there's lots of cool certificates. If you've not checked out that link to the certificates and minors, you should check it out. I've oftentimes advised students who had actually taken all of the courses necessary for a certificate, but just didn't realize it. So then they could basically just like click a button and get a certificate. Oh, I see the chat under here. Sorry, I didn't see the chat earlier. So Ben had asked, and that would be specifically for a master's. Is that about the shirk, Ben?
Oh no, it was about the one page paper you write in the first semester.
Yeah, so it's mostly it's for the purpose of the class, and it's all built into the class. But it's seen as like, by modeling it after the application process for a master's, it's basically like an alley-oop for students who want to go on to grad school. But it's, I recognize not everybody wants to go on to grad school for a variety of different reasons, all of them legitimate. It's meant to help you do that. But many of our students decide that they're not going to go to grad school right off the bat. And then Alex had asked, do I have to list any minors in the application if I want to do combined honors? So Alex, in your application to IDS, so this first stage of application, you don't have to do that. It helps if you already know that you're going to do it, you can list it, and that'll just help me advise you. But that, where you have to list the minors, is in the formal application to the registrar. Actually, I should have talked about that a little bit. So it's a two-step application process. The first step is to be considered for admission by IDS. And that's the application form with all the attachments that you all have probably seen. And then that we determine here within IDS, we'll sit down, our committee will sit down, go through all the files and make decisions about who's in and who's not in. And once you're in, then the next step is to go through the formality of listing all of your classes and declaring what you're going to be majoring in and minoring in. So that's when the secondary application comes into play. And that just goes to the registrar. And that's just logistical at that point. That's just making sure you have the right classes. And in rare circumstances, sometimes people might have to drop a minor in order to finish the degree in the amount of time that they need, which is why I really wanted to flag that the minors and the certificates operate differently. So yeah, does that answer your question on that one, Alex? Okay, great, thank you. And then Morgan, how long does the writing excerpt have to be for the application? I mean, a term paper is ideal, Morgan. So, however long your term paper might be, 10, 15 pages. If you have something, maybe you wrote a policy brief, that's really good instead, and that's only 5 pages. That's fine too. Ideally, what I'm looking for is a term paper, just because a term paper most closely reflects the level of research that you'd need to do. But yeah, just put your best piece of writing forward. And I guess Shala, as a creative writer, maybe that might be something creative, so think of it this way: what you want the committee to read, and then think, is this person going to successfully write an honors thesis? That's what the piece of writing is meant to convey. Good questions. Any other questions?
I had a question about the kind of like the flexibility of topic once I think I read something about how like there is some flexibility, like you don't have to be like stuck to what you put on your application. But I was just wondering how flexible that is. Kind of just thinking of like, in my brain is kind of like, I don't know, I'm interested in a lot of different things. I'm just wondering about if I say one thing and then I want to pivot a little bit, how, like what that process is and how tied you are to your specific idea.
Totally untied, massive flexibility. Really what we're looking for there, and we hummed and hawed about it, right? Like we were like, do we want to ask them to write like a full-on proposal with like all the, and we don't want that, because in some sense we want you to share as a class in that collective experience of arriving on the topic, right? And we spend a lot of time in class. So what we need to know is that there is something that you could work on in a pinch if you needed to. But we fully expect that in the fall semester, that with all of the different kinds of like exercises and workshops that we end up doing, that your topics will evolve. And sometimes it evolves to the point where you realize, actually, I don't think I should be working with this supervisor anymore. I might switch to this supervisor. And that's all fine too, as long as it's kind of done in a professional and respectful way. And the honors coordinator who teaches the class is there to help you every step of the way in making those decisions. So you are not obligated to your topic. We just want to see that you have thought about a credible topic. Excellent question. Anyone else?
I have a question, maybe a bit out of left field, but it's to do with I saw the study abroad, the Trent and Ghana, and what was the other one? I forget. Sorry.
Probably Cuba.
Yeah, there was a Cuba one, and there was three. But anyways,
India.
okay. I was wondering if like, for example, if you did those next year, and would there be any conflict with, for example, if you applied halfway through next year to do honors the year after? I'm kind of making a mess of this, but like, would those classes kind of like carry over, or how does that all work, I guess?
Yeah, I understand what you mean. So so two ways of answering the question. One is we have put many of our study abroad programs on hiatus during the pandemic. So it's not clear that they'll be up and running again for next year. And I'm pretty sure the Cuba one, at least, that we have historically done here at Dal, probably won't be running next year. The Trent and Ghana program, I'm not sure what they might be doing. That might be an option. It's a full year program in Ghana. And then the one in India that goes through Mount Allison that our students sometimes take is a 6-month program. So the way those study abroad programs would work is that you would go and study and you'd get a certain amount of credit hours, and then that would transfer back to your degree, and that would absolutely count towards fulfilling your overall degree requirements. The caveat with the honors program is that to be in the honors program, you have to take the honors seminar in your last year. I mean, you at least have to take them in consecutively. So you got to enroll in 4401 and then 4402 in the fall and winter semester. So it wouldn't work if you were away for one of those semesters, unless you had a really creative way of kind of working it out online, maybe. But generally speaking, you have to do it at the same time. So say you were going to do the Ghana program and you were away for all of next year, and then you transferred those credits back over to Dal. And then next year, you went away next year, and then the following year you applied to honors. That would be fine, but you have to be here to be in the class for the honors program.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Megan is asking, you couldn't do the first part of the honors program in the winter semester and second part in the fall. No, you can't. So you can't mix it up, and it's because it's really just one class moving all the way through. So we don't offer them. We only offer one section of 4401 a year and one section of 4402. And if we had the ability to just call it one single class like we used to many years ago, we would. But I think mostly for logistical reasons, we have to have individual course codes, but that's why you have to take the two of them together. Otherwise you wouldn't get the honors degree. Really good questions from everyone.
I was just wondering what the difference between a regular and a combined honors is.
So the concentrated honors program just means that the only thing that you're getting your major in is development studies. And because of that, we have a higher expectation of IDS and IDS approved classes that you would have to do. Whereas the combined honors, it understands that you're trying to fulfill the requirements of two departments at the same time. So you have a lower threshold of courses. So for example, I think if IDS is your only major and you're doing the honors, it's something like 54 credit hours in IDS and IDS approved classes, and it might be 36 or maybe 42. Would be your requirements of if you were doing the combined honors with IDS as your first. So the expectation is that you're doing like rigorous honors level coursework in two fields instead of one. So overall, all students graduating with an honors degree in FAST will do 120 credit hours of something. It just depends on what that something is. Does that answer your question, Rick?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Plan on taking a 5th year because I'm short on credit for 4 years. If I don't get it this year, can I apply again next year? If you don't get in this year, yeah, if it's going to be a full 5th year, Alex, then you can totally do that. It just would require that you do, what do you call it? 4401 and 4402 in the same year. I should say one thing that I've done once before, because it was kind of an exceptional circumstance, was I had a 3rd year international student who, for a variety of, like legitimate reasons extending to the incredible cost of tuition and all the other logistics, had an opportunity to finish in 3.5 years instead of the 5 years or whatever it was. So that person asked if they could be considered, when they were technically in their 3rd year, to do the 4401 and 4402, but then they were going to do a semester of afterwards and then graduate. So we were able to make that work as a kind of one-off situation. So if somebody was in a similar situation where, like I have to do a whole, like Alex, if you needed like 2 classes to finish, I would seriously consider admitting you this year anyway. And then next year you could just do your 2 credit hours in the fall and then finish without having to enroll in 2 semesters rather than 1. So it's kind of situational in that regard. But ideally, the sort of prototypical path is that, assuming people were to do year 1, year 2, year 3, and then year 4, they would do the honors program. But if we can accommodate and make it work, I'm not interested in making people's lives more difficult. If you get what I'm saying. Cool. Anyone else?
I had one more question about the kind of like what the part 2 of the class looks like in terms of what is the timeline of writing, or like the structure, is that more determined by in class, so everyone is kind of working at the same speed, or is that more a decision between you and your supervisor?
Really excellent question. So generally speaking, that's more of a discussion piece between you and your supervisor, because each supervisor generally has their own approach about how they like to work with students. As a class, we set broad goals, right? So for example, everybody needs to have the proposal done and defended and presented by the end of November of the first semester. And then people are free to start writing over Christmas. Some do, some don't. And then we start in January, and we don't always meet. I should also say we don't always meet every week. Sometimes, 2-3 times during each semester, we probably don't meet so that you can focus on your research and writing. And then in the winter semester, we have one-on-one research meetings, usually with me as well as your supervisor. And then we meet as a class to do group writing sessions. So we do it as a real writing workshop where we sit together, we hammer things out, we talk about setting goals, and then we discuss what we accomplished and what we didn't. And then the hard deadline is that, when is the hard deadline? I want to say by the end of February, early March, might be like March 5th or something like that. You have to have a full draft of the thesis. So all like 40 pages done and sent to the supervisor and to the course instructor. And then we spend a couple of weeks working on that, give you a ton of feedback. And then while we're working on that feedback, then students will work on their research presentations because their draft is done at that point. And then we send back the feedback, and then you have about 2 weeks to turn it around and get your revisions in by the first week of April. And then that's what gets graded. And then in that interim time, then you do your research presentations on what you found. Mm-hmm.
Is that presentation to the class, or in what form is that presentation?
It's to the class, and we oftentimes will invite supervisors as well. And supervisors tend to come when they can. Yeah, it's always nice to see students kind of defend their work. But we don't do a formal defense. I know some other departments do formal defenses where, you know, you can conceivably pass and fail at that point. So we don't do that in IDS. I know I did my undergrad honors here at Dal actually like centuries ago in the Department of Political Science, and there was a formal defense at that point. But I don't know if they're still doing it. We don't do it that way. So there is a presentation, but it's more of a collegial presentation to share the work that you've done. And then what you're assessed on is the piece of writing that you produce. And I should say too, this is a good opportunity to say off what you're going to see. Like if those of you who enter into the program, you'll see when you look at the syllabus, there's a whole bunch of assignments and metrics that I expect you to kind of work towards, and they're weighted at 0. They're like 0% if your grade goes towards it. And then 100% of the grade is ultimately, or I think it's like 80% of the grade is determined by the final piece of writing. And that seems unusual, but the way I take, when I teach this class, I take like an approach based on student autonomy. So I say, you know, I think you need to meet these metrics out of the spirit of collegiality for the other people in the class, and because it's going to help you write the best possible thesis. I understand that people have all kinds of things going on in their life, and it might prevent them from doing that. I don't want to punish anybody if they didn't write like I don't know, like an annotated bibliography on time or something like that. So it's really meant to heighten your independence and to help you work on your independence as a researcher. Part of my personal pedagogical approach is always a critical self-reflexiveness. So one little assignment that I ask everybody to do at the end of both semesters is to engage in a process of critical self-reflection where you evaluate your own performance and set goals for the future work that you do. It's not punitive, but it's something that I think makes everybody a better researcher and a better writer. So the goals are there, the metrics are there. It's up to you to decide how you fulfill them. Yeah, thanks, Megan. Thanks for coming. Yeah, we are coming up on time. We probably have enough time for one more question if folks have any last burning thoughts. Yeah, Shala, go ahead.
Mine is not as much, I mean, I guess it is thesis related, but I had reached out to a supervisor because I wasn't aware it was a tentative to put the name in. I thought we needed to have like a set supervisor. So I reached out to Kate Swanson because her work seemed to gravitate towards what I wanted to do, but she's new in the department and she was just asking me what honors supervisor might need to do. Like I know the basic, but I don't know fully what to tell her. So I just wanted to ask that.
Yeah, you know, Kate's brand new in our department, a real rock star. I've actually, so Kate reached out to me about that too, Shala. So we've had a conversation, and I kind of filled her in, and I let her know, you know, like the application form makes it look like students have to have it all figured out, but they don't. So if it works out that you work with Kate, then that's fantastic. But otherwise, I wouldn't sweat it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, well, folks, I really hope that I see applications from all of you. You've got a week to get it in. It should be pretty straightforward. If any of you have any difficulties or have any questions, feel free to flip me an email, parasram@dal.ca. And otherwise, yeah, I look forward to considering your applications and hopefully welcoming you into the program. Have a lovely day.
Thank you.
you.
Have a good day.